To join. So hi everybody, welcome. Thank you for joining Plant-Based Camp Cooking this afternoon. We're here, Community Nature Connection Training Institute, here with Ana Karen Ramirez. Excited to share this webinar with you, Plant-Based Camp Cooking. So as we're welcoming people and having attendees join the webinar, we would love for you all to type us up a little introduction using the chat box. You can just let us know your name and where you're joining from today. And then if you're affiliated with an organization, shout that out. And we love to see where folks are joining from. So thanks for being here and welcome. All right, everybody, welcome to Community Nature Connections Training Institute. We're here this afternoon for preparing plant-based meals for the outdoors webinar with Ana Karen Ramirez. Excited to have you all joining this afternoon. And as we welcome people and have people join, we'd love for you to type up a quick introduction using the chat box. If you would just let us know where you're joining from, what your name is, and if you're affiliated with an organization, let us know that in the chat box. We will be getting started shortly. So welcome. I see we have some new attendees joining in. It's about 2:02, so we're gonna get started shortly. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. We are here for a webinar, Preparing Plant-Based Meals for the Outdoors, and you are joining the Community Nature Connection Training Institute with instructor Ana Karen Ramirez. Thank you for being here this afternoon. As you join, if you would please go ahead and type your introduction into the chat box. We would love to hear your name, where you're joining us from, as well as whether you're affiliated with an organization. Go ahead and shout that out. And thanks everybody so much for being here this afternoon. So my name is Celeste Gasparic, and I am the Training Institute Manager with Community Nature Connection. If you don't know about Community Nature Connection, we are a nonprofit organization based in Los Angeles, and we work on increasing access to the outdoors for diverse communities. We do so in partnership with the communities we serve. And today you're joining a webinar that's part of the Training Institute. And the Training Institute is one of our programs where we are working on increasing access to outdoor-related training opportunities. So thanks for being here this afternoon, and I'm very excited to welcome you to Preparing Plant-Based Meals for the Outdoors, and excited to turn it over to Ana Karen Ramirez.
Hi everyone, good afternoon. My name is Ana Karen, and I'm currently a program coordinator with Community Nature Connection. So I supervise a few of our youth leadership programs, and it's actually through planning our youth leadership programs and some of our camping trips with our youth and youth from our partners that I got the idea for this training to prepare plant-based meals. Largely because for several years I was vegetarian, and when I was tasked with coming up with a meal plan for all of our camping trips, I didn't really personally know too much about preparing and cooking meat. And so I built our meal plans around plant-based a diet. And I actually found a lot of benefits other than eating vegetarian to these programs. And so I wanted to share some of those tips because I've found that eating plant-based outdoors just really eliminates a lot of issues that might come when otherwise preparing meat-based dishes. This is also really great for anyone trying to dive into vegetarianism or veganism. A lot of the ingredients are also gluten-free. So just trying to accommodate more different dietary restrictions and expanding our palate as well when we're outdoors. Something beyond just hamburgers and hot dogs that I think a lot of us are used to and familiar with when we're outdoors.
Hey, Anna Karen, I just wanted to jump in and mention that we will be answering your questions throughout the presentation. So if you want to use the Q&A box, my job will be to monitor those questions, and I will pass them over to Anna Karen at stopping points throughout the webinar. So thanks.
Great, thank you. Yeah, so just a quick overview of what we're going to go over today. I'm just going to briefly talk about what is a plant-based diet, where you get your essential nutrients and vitamins from in these meals, benefits of eating plant-based outdoors, how to prepare your own spice kit, also how to pack your own snacks, which ones to take, how to plan for a large group, such as the ones that I was mentioning, where it might not just be family and friends. Also recipes for a full weekend of camping, car camping. Also recipes for day trips and some weekend backpacking meal prep essentials. And a little bit about how to dehydrate your own food for those backcountry meals. And so I think probably after each section, it would be good to stop for questions. So a plant-based diet. Plant-based or plant-forward eating patterns focus on foods primarily from plants. So not just fruits and vegetables, grains, legumes, and beans. And this doesn't necessarily mean that you're vegan or vegetarian or like me, a flexitarian. I would consider myself. It just means that you proportionately choose more plant sources for your food. And so these meals are typically built around beans, whole grains, vegetables, and especially for the outdoors, starting your day off with whole grains for breakfast. So oatmeal, quinoa, buckwheat, and barley. Then adding nuts and seeds along with fresh fruits in the beginning of the day is really great for incorporating plant-based breakfasts. And you also want to go for greens. So trying a variety of leafy green vegetables like kale, collards, spinach is really good also for these backcountry meals. Spinach, I would say, is better for day trips just because it wilts really quickly. But we'll also talk about the best vegetables to take that are much hardier to take outdoors with you. So vitamins and nutrients. Plant-based diet offers all of the necessary proteins, fats, carbohydrates, vitamins, and minerals for optimal health. And they're typically higher in fiber and phytonutrients. There are, however, sometimes supplements that need to be taken by folks who eat fully plant-based, specifically vitamin B12. Some of these recipes actually include nutritional yeast, which is a great source of B12 and other B vitamins. So that eliminates that need for any supplements as well. So benefits of a plant-based diet outdoors. It's significantly less expensive than meat, and especially now that meat is becoming an increasingly expensive product in the market, it's really great not having to worry about that cost. And working for a nonprofit, trying to cut down any additional costs that aren't necessary is really vital in making sure that our money stretches and that everything that we're buying can really be used in a lot of different ways. And so definitely a great benefit. It also meets dietary restrictions for larger groups, which is really nice. Even if there's only one vegetarian in the group, it feels really nice to make sure that everyone is included and everyone's needs are being met. So even just like not having that person have to cut out certain ingredients from their meals, but rather supplementing it, I feel really helps everybody in the group feel included. It's also more environmentally friendly. As we all know, meat production contributes a lot to greenhouse gas emissions. So that's just another added benefit of having a plant-based diet. There's also increasingly accessible meat alternatives now with so much investment and infrastructure going into meat alternatives. Meat alternatives are a lot more available in stores that are not just health food stores. So more neighborhoods have access to plant alternatives. And this also means that the quality is increasing a lot. Definitely a few years ago, there wasn't as much meat alternative options. But now with so much research, there's a lot of different brands out there to choose from, a lot of different flavors. And there's a lot to be said about just how much is being done in that realm. It's also a much faster cleanup process. So anyone that has experience cooking meat, especially outdoors, cleaning up the fat is always a process that is so much more complicated outside. And also with critters, you really don't want to attract any other wildlife than you already might just by being present there and cooking. So it's definitely nice to not have any fat to clean up afterwards or any other, blood and things that are included in packaged meat. There's also less of a threat of undercooking meat or cross-contamination. So definitely when you are in charge of other people and feeding other people, it's really great to not have to consider anyone possibly being sick. So it's a great preventative measure as well. It's also very time efficient. So definitely meat takes significantly longer to cook than other veggies, but when you're using meat alternatives or just vegetables in general. Celeste, is that making a noise, my notifications?
Yes.
Okay. All right, I'll just try to see how I can mute that. Sorry about that. And also no one can tell the difference. A lot of these meals, no one has ever really been able to tell that they're meat-free. Sometimes I don't share that with the students, but I remember this one time there was somebody like really sadly eating a chicken nugget and they were trying to become vegetarian, and I let them know that it was like a chickpea-based chicken nugget, and they were really happy. So things like that are always really nice. So essential ingredients for plant-based cooking outdoors. This is a condensed list, I would say, of some of the most essential ingredients that you can purchase or probably already have at home. So great sources of protein include black beans, chickpeas, quinoa. There's also hemp seeds, peas, almond butter, and almonds, flax seeds, oatmeal, tofu, kale, bell pepper, onion, garlic, carrots, sweet potatoes, and potatoes. And basically everything on the right column, those vegetables are some of the best and heartiest vegetables to take with you outdoors since they don't go bad really easily. And other great sources of food. And tofu, there's so many different options of how it's packaged as well. And there's some that come in blocks that are not in water. So that always makes it a little bit easier just for packaging. So different methods of camp cooking, of cooking outdoors. One of the most basic ones is a cast iron skillet and a cast iron Dutch oven. So the skillet is on the bottom left of the screen, and the Dutch oven is that image that you see right there of that hanging pot. And so I believe there's a lot of misconceptions or myths around using cast iron skillets when cooking outdoors, especially for safety reasons. So I just wanted to take some time to talk a little bit about what you should not cook in a cast iron skillet. I see that we have a question as well, so maybe that could be pulled up after this slide. So things that you shouldn't cook on a cast iron skillet are foods that are really smelly, such as garlic, peppers, delicate fish, and more acidic foods because they really leave those aromatic memories in the pot. And it can turn up in other things that you start to cook in it as well. We try to stay away from cooking acidic foods in these cast iron skillets because there's just a possibility of them degrading some of the oil that's on there and removing some of that casting. So eggs and other sticky things are really good to keep away from these materials as well, just because they're gonna burn so easily. One of the benefits of a cast iron skillet is that it emits significantly more heat than steel or other metals. And really, eggs don't take that long to cook, so you'll really just be burning them if you leave them on there. And the great way to maintain the integrity of your cast iron skillets and Dutch ovens is to scrub it well with hot soapy water. I know that there is a misconception as well that soap can lead to the removal of some of the casting, but that's actually not true because after the oil is on your pan and it's heated, it becomes polymerized. Therefore, it's an ingrained part of the casting, and soap isn't going to remove that. So you can feel safe using soapy water on your cast iron dishes. You also want to dry it thoroughly, and you want to spread a layer of oil after cooking it each time, and just placing it over the fire so that it continues to heat up each time. And this is called seasoning. Seasoning your cast iron dishes is great after each use and to make sure that they retain their non-stick structure. So after each use, it's great to make sure that they don't sit in water for too long because water is kind of a natural enemy of iron as it causes rust. So you want to make sure to dry it thoroughly and to re-season it by adding oil each time you use it and just letting it sit in the fire and then letting it cool down before storing it. And next above there we have a regular propane stove. These are some of the most common ones for car camping, weekend trips, and really a common thing that ends up being an issue with these is the igniters. So just making sure that you're already ready with a long glider or matches or anything for that igniter. And that just requires regular propane tanks and the attachments are there as well. It's always really cool teaching the students how to use these for the first time on our camping trips. Next we have on the right is what's called a jet boil. And this is a really quick way to boil water. You can see that the little propane tank is that white portion on the bottom. And it already has an insulated kind of casting over it to help protect from the wind. But it's definitely always a great idea to make sure that you're away from the wind, just to make sure that that flame is really heating up either your water or your food. In a lot of places, an aluminum covering is available to purchase for this purpose. On the top or on the middle left, we have an MSR stove, and this one runs on white gas, and this one is a little bit more intricate of putting together, and it's just really lightweight and better for longer backpacking trips. And this does require just a little bit of knowledge of how the product works, just to be able to fix the jet whenever it goes wrong. But really that's one for more longer extensive backpacking trips, which I personally wouldn't use. Just some safety tips when using all of these materials. Make sure that you're above everything, either if it's boiling water or an open fire, is that you're standing above it and not sitting next to it in case any hot items spill, any coals or ashes kind of fly away from it. So make sure to stay safe out there while you're cooking as well. Celeste, do we have any questions?
So we had one question come in, and that was just about a recording of the webinar. So I typed in an answer that we will be sending around the recording, as well as the slides and any resources in a follow-up email after the training is over.
Awesome, thank you. All right, well, if anyone has any questions about these methods of cooking, make sure to type them in and we can get back to you. So spice up your life. Getting your spice kit together is one of the best ways to really amp up any meal that you have, whether it can be the simplest thing, just beans and rice, but properly spicing your meals really goes a long way when you're in the backcountry. I've like hiked back to the trailhead like 3 miles just to pick up our spice kit because that makes or breaks the meal. So this is a list of the 10 spices that I feel like are essential. You can add or remove any of them that you like, but allspice, cayenne, salt, pepper, onion powder, garlic powder, oregano, Cajun, curry powder, and cinnamon are my top 10 favorites. They come up in so many spice mixes for different meals. Brown sugar is also a really great idea to include in there as well. And on the left side, there are different combinations of a lot of these spices as well that makes different meals from different regions. I also really like using bouillon cubes. Vegetable-based ones are fine. Poultry seasoning, all of this is really great, lightweight and easy to carry. It's pretty clutch when it comes to backpacking, is just carrying like little spice balls to put in soups or bean dishes, really anything. Here in the middle right, there's a multi-spice kit, which you can buy for like $6, but I would really recommend buying one if you do invest in something like this, to make sure that it's that you're able to refill it. Because if not, then you can see up here on the bottom or on the top right that there's a pill container that you can also purchase on Amazon for the same price, but is also removable or refillable, I mean. And some folks even like use pill cases like the weak ones to fill in their spices. That's also a possibility. I feel like sometimes having that openness is a little hard just sanitary wise if your fingers aren't clean. So I really like just the top right pill container for adding spices and carrying it. I would also recommend carrying around those extra salt and pepper packets that you get from restaurants, and also the Parmesan and chili flakes from pizza places. I know those often take up so much space in our drawers that those are really great to just like pack in your backpacking kit and take wherever, and it adds a lot to your meals. So next I'm going to talk a little bit about planning a group camping trip. And this is more so for folks that plan trips, for folks that maybe are not their friends or family. And so the goals for this is really to be cost efficient, to use a lot of versatile ingredients, and not aim for dishes that you know, not everyone might like. So the dishes that these recipes call for are really simple and, you know, really easily liked, I would say, by a lot of people. They also have a really easy setup and cleanup and meet a lot of dietary restrictions. And this list right here, for about $200, there's enough food for about 15 people for 2 days, just with this list right here. And here, if you really want to be fully plant-based, purchasing veggie deli slices and vegan cheese slices are optional. And I would say that when packing for other people, things that are already like plant-based ground beef are some really easy ways to get a lot of bang for your buck. And so things that I always purchase are whole wheat bread, flour and corn tortillas, veggie patties or Beyond Meat ground beef, any nut or seed butter, turkey or veggie deli slices, vegan or non-vegan cheese slices, jelly, hummus, and egg white cartons. Egg white cartons are have been a game changer. They're a really great way to minimize cleanup of cracking eggs and having all of that protein. And typically 1 carton is enough for us over the weekend. So that's just something that adds so much ease to all of our breakfasts. And that's why I included in there. So you also want to make sure to have your oil or butter. A great way to package oil is in a squeeze bottle. So basically for any of these, I would consider putting it in one of those travel squeeze bottles. Your spice kit, carrots, celery, lime, onion, avocados, bell peppers, potatoes, lettuce, tomatoes, granola bars. The Nature Valley triple pack is what I really like to get for a lot of people. Some fruit, and I'll never raw s'mores experience when we're camping, so I'll pick up marshmallows and chocolates. But if you want to make those plant-based, there's vegan marshmallows and dark chocolate alternatives as well. And all of these ingredients that are really simple are perfect for making lunch snacks, burrito bowls or veggie tacos, and making guac. Everyone always has a really good time. Avocados go a really long way with this dinner and the breakfast the next day, which is typically those egg and potatoes, and those can be burritos as well. So just adding a lot of different options for folks to mix those around. And now I'll talk a little bit about cooking over an open fire using those cast iron skillets and Dutch oven that I mentioned earlier. And so the goals for this are to have simple meals that are fuel efficient, quick, and low maintenance. And so for this, you can make 3 meals out of the following ingredients. So 1 block of tofu, red potatoes, bell pepper, 1 bell pepper, a yellow onion, oil, flour tortillas, vegan cheese shreds, lime, red lentils, diced tomatoes, black beans, corn, soy riso sausages, and then the spices would be chili powder, paprika, cumin, cayenne, cilantro, garlic and onion powder, salt and pepper, turmeric, and optionals are vegan mayo and vegan sour cream. And so for breakfast, you can here on a cast iron skillet make a tofu scramble. And here you would only need a half a block of tofu, a red potato diced, half of a yellow onion, half of the bell pepper, your spice mix, and oil. And so the spice mix that you can make for this breakfast is the one on the yellow box. So that's 2 tablespoons of nutritional yeast, garlic powder, onion powder, the salt, the paprika, and the turmeric. And that can always be made ahead of time to make things a little bit easier, or you can just go ahead and pack those up. And so in order to prepare this dish, you would just need to start by heating the cast iron skillet, adding oil to it, tossing in the diced potatoes, leave those for a few minutes as well with the onion, about 7 to 10 minutes until the potatoes are soft and the onions are translucent. Then you want to add in the diced bell peppers, cook those for a few minutes. Last is the tofu. You want to drain those, crumble them. And if you already have tofu at home but are trying to repackage it for going outdoors, then you can just put it in a jar with water. But you can go ahead and drain, crumble, and add that tofu. Mix it all in, then add the spices, and you're ready to go. It should be done in about 15 to 20 minutes, and this meal serves 2 people.
Hey, Anna Karen.
Yes.
Do you have any tips for keeping avocados safe and fresh for a longer time?
The only tip I would have, do you like before or after cutting, is that specified?
I think keeping them safe, like if you're packing them in a backpack, what temperature should they be stored at? Like any tips like that?
For sure. Well, if it's cut, definitely adding lemon to it will help preserve it. And also if it's in a half, just make sure that you save the half that has the seed in it to make sure that it doesn't go bad. In terms of storage, just keeping it up at the very top, considering that it's an item that might be easily crushed. So that's something that I would keep. If I'm backpacking, I would probably keep that a lot more accessible, like with my personal snacks. And otherwise, just carefully. Yeah, I would put it in a cooler. And something else for car camping is that if you have a cooler, it's really nice to have a different separate tote inside that's dry so that it doesn't get mushy. So kind of having a little pantry situation going on helps like eliminate a lot of that as well.
Thank you. And we had one other question come in about the cast iron. Is it okay to still cook onion in the cast iron? Or like, will the aroma stay on it?
I typically use onion for most of my meals, so I don't actually know if I'm getting traces of like the ghost onion from before. But I definitely think that it's fine. I've used it a lot, so it's safe in my opinion. I use it for most meals, so I don't mind if it lingers for my next one. I don't bake any like desserts on it, so that might be an issue then.
Thanks.
Great. And so with these same ingredients, you can make a lunch, a Southwest style quesadilla. And the only thing that you would need for this would be 4 flour tortillas, the same vegan cheese shreds, soy riso sausage, can of sweet, half a can of sweet corn, half a can of black beans, and some quesadilla sauce that you can prepare ahead of time as well with all of the ingredients that are in the yellow box. So that's vegan mayo, that's chili powder, paprika, cumin, cilantro, lime, and salt, and some oil. And so to prepare this, you would just want to heat a cast iron Dutch oven, or if you only have a skillet and you have a lid that can go over it, that would be fine. But you would want to spread the sauce on the inside of the tortillas, add the beans, corn, cheese, and a slice of the soy riso, and then just adding oil to the oven or the skillet, and then adding the quesadillas and flipping them every 5 minutes. So super quick lunch, same ingredients. And for dinner, the other half of all of those ingredients could help you make a one-pot chili. This would take a little bit longer, but it serves 2, and it's a little bit of a set and forget type of thing. So you would need the other half of that onion, the other half of that bell pepper, half a cup of red lentils or more depending on how many folks you want to serve, a can of diced tomatoes, sweet corn, beans, salt to taste, and oil. And a spice mix that you can add with this one, also in the yellow box, includes chili powder, paprika, cumin, and cayenne. And so to make this, you would just need to heat up the cast iron Dutch oven, add oil, half of an onion, and a bell pepper, adding a cup and a half of water. And then once that's boiling, adding the red lentils. Afterwards, adding the can of diced tomatoes and all of those spices, and then putting a lid on that and letting that sit for about 10 minutes. So after 10 minutes, you can continue to stir in half of the black beans and the corn, and then put a lid on it and keep it there for another 10 minutes. And afterwards, you can add salt to taste. You can stir, and serve it. That's a complicated one. And so those are the 3 meals that you can make over a fire and with those ingredients. Do we have any additional questions?
A request to flash back to the quesadilla recipe really quick. And then just so everybody knows, we're gonna send out the presentation afterwards. So you'll have access to all of these recipes.
Yeah, all right. So we'll leave it here for a few seconds. All right, so for spending the day outside, the real great thing about this is that you don't really need an exhaustive ingredient list or just one to pay attention to, because most of this is set up with the idea that this will all be prepared ahead of time before. And so this is really great to reduce the amount of trash that we leave at the places that we visit. It also cuts down on the and ensures that you spend more time actually enjoying the place that you're at instead of cooking. And you can also be a little bit more creative with all of this prep so it can taste even better than the same ingredients. So a barbecue jackfruit salad that I've made that is a really great way to prepare and assemble. Prepare ahead of time to assemble on site. Only includes 1 can of jackfruit, sauce of whatever choice, salt, pepper, cayenne, and oil, as well as vinegar. Vinegar of your choice. I wouldn't go with apple cider vinegar. I would choose like rice wine vinegar or white vinegar. And veggies, spinach, bell pepper, avocado, lime, and onion. So to prepare this one, I would heat up 2 pans with oil and let, after slicing bell peppers, letting those roast there on the side. And afterwards, once those are already roasting, I would chop and soak the onion in equal parts lime, vinegar, salt, and pepper. And I typically use a red onion for this. And this kind of pickles it a little bit, and keeping that overnight or just however long you do, the longer the better. Afterwards, I rinse and chop and season the jackfruit. I season the jackfruit with the same cayenne, salt, and pepper. Afterwards, after sauteing that for about 15 to 20 minutes, I'll add the barbecue sauce and stir for another 5 to 10. And once that's done, basically all of the ingredients are ready, so you can pack up that jackfruit in a separate Tupperware, the bell pepper and the onion. Afterwards, you can go ahead and, once that has cooled down, have everything ready for the next day. Just some bowls, a bag of spinach, an avocado, and that's really all you need to put everything together. It tastes really good. I've gotten great feedback.
Hey, Anna Karen, where can you find canned jackfruit?
I found it at Trader Joe's. If you don't have a Trader Joe's near you, Asian markets, but that's where I get it from. And I'm sure more health food stores carry it now, and Asian markets do as well.
Thank you.
So next is a vegan niswa salad. And this is basically just a chickpea replacement for the tuna that would typically go in a niswa salad. And the combination of lemon, parsley, dill, and Dijon mustard really help give you that tuna flavor. And the chickpea as a replacement for tuna comes up a little bit later as well. So I would just pay attention to that as an option for replacing tuna. And so for this recipe, all you'll need is lettuce, a can of green beans, 8 to 10 of those little tomatoes, 2 Persian cucumbers, celery, a can of chickpeas, olive oil, and that mix of lemon, parsley, dill, and Dijon mustard. And so first you want to make sure that the heartier veggies are prepared. So the potatoes, the green beans, that they're rinsed, as well as the chickpeas. Next, you want to mash the chickpeas into whatever consistency you desire. If you want it a little softer, you can go ahead and just mash them up with the fork a little bit longer. But in that container, once it's already mashed, that's when I add those seasonings in there. And afterwards, you want to just go ahead and cut the tomatoes, the chickpeas, the cucumbers, and the potatoes. You can cut those, and afterwards just add, adding your lettuce to a large bowl, veggies, and the chickpea over it. And I would also recommend just storing the chickpea separately so that you can just assemble them on site as well, like the previous salad. And that would really keep things from getting soggy in that span of time. So similar to the last one, just kind of assemble everything and pack everything separately. Next is eggplant bites. I made these this weekend and they were really good. And this requires just like however many that you want, but just like the palm-sized eggplants. Those really help just make it an easier snack instead of having to bite them. But this was really simple, just preheating the oven to 350, cutting little slices into the eggplants and filling it with olive oil, marinara sauce, salt, pepper, and Italian seasoning, and putting that in the oven for 20 minutes. And these surprisingly just like keep such a great consistency where they're not too soft and mushy. I'm a little weird about eggplant being too mushy sometimes, so this was just a really great snack to like take out and not feel guilty about it also. So really great tasting and just an awesome consistency. And for anyone that's like weird about eggplant, this was a really like great, comfortable way to eat it. So carrot dogs is something that I found out about while setting this up. And they're really interesting. At first I was like, okay, that's silly. But they're actually quite impressive just in the way that I can assume that they taste. I haven't actually made these, and now I think I will. But really, however many carrots you want to use, this recipe calls for 6, but just as long as they're like closer to that sausage shape as possible, like not too wonky, pretty straight, all you have to do is peel them. And in order to make the marinade for them to kind of like get that flavor, you'll just use equal parts. I think that the recipe that I found, and also share the link to this as well, since I got this from another source. So equal parts of soy sauce, apple cider vinegar, vegetable broth, and liquid smoke. And also a teaspoon of minced garlic and a little bit of maple syrup just to balance out some of those like harsh acidic flavors. And that's really what you need to make the marinade for them. And so what you would need to do is just peel the carrots, boil them for 10 to 15 minutes until they're soft, and then let them marinate in that in a Ziploc bag. And you can just like take this Ziploc bag to go, and on site you can go ahead and just grill them up and serve them with whatever you want, if it's other buns and other toppings as well. So I'm excited to try this one, and I wanted to share it because maybe not everyone has heard about carrot dogs. Dairy-free ice cream that I also made this weekend, which was really bomb, and I wanted to share. Super simple. All you need is a can of coconut milk, strawberries, and we use like the leftover chai spice mix also from Trader Joe's, but That was just to add flavor. You can really add any spices or seasonings that you want to it. But essentially we just chopped strawberries and added them into a container with a can of coconut milk and some spiced chai and mashed it until the milk turned pink and froze it. And that was a really good ice cream dessert afterwards. Great, so moving on to planning for a weekend camping trip. So some goals for this are just having really simple, time and fuel efficient recipes. And there's also not an ingredient list here because these are just suggestions, and some of them. There's a lot more flexibility with weekend camping trips as opposed to planning for a group or knowing that you can only cook with a limited amount of items. So there's definitely more flexibility. But one really fun option for breakfast, if you're bored of oatmeal, is blending your oatmeal and turning it into pancakes. So for this, you would just need 2 cups of rolled oats, 2 tablespoons of coconut sugar, a teaspoon and a half of baking powder, and baking soda. Cinnamon is optional to add as well, salt, and a shelf-stable carton of any plant-based milk of your choice. And it's really, if you already have alternative milk that isn't in, I would just recommend using those like small shelf-stable cartons. It's a lot easier to package and travel with and make sure that it doesn't go bad as easily. So I definitely recommend that. And then just a little bit of apple cider vinegar, or a lemon. Actually, a lemon is probably easier to travel with than trying to package apple cider vinegar just for this recipe. So when you're preparing this is also something that you can prepare ahead of time. And it's also necessary because you need a blender. So you want to mix all of the dry ingredients into either a blender or whatever food processor you have, just until it creates that flour-like consistency. And then you can just go ahead and label and store that. But when you're ready to cook it, you just add that entire mix to a bowl, and then add your 1.5 cups of plant-based milk and the half a lemon. And so that half a lemon helps just combine with the baking soda in order for it to fluff up. And then afterwards, just mix that all together and grease your skillet and pour and flip every 2 to 3 minutes and top with whatever you want. You can package fruits or berries beforehand or maple syrup before, whatever you like. And it's just a fun way, I think, to mix up so much oatmeal. Also, before we move on, I would just say that overnight oats is a really great idea. If you don't want to go ahead and make pancakes, making overnight oats and jarring those into 2 large jars is enough for an entire weekend as well. So next, breakfast is chilaquiles, and I really like making chilaquiles when camping because it's really easy, fast when using tortilla chips. I don't think I could justify making chilaquiles with tortilla chips at home, but I can when I'm camping, so I really appreciate that. It also makes the process so much easier because you're not focused on frying up tortillas and using so much fuel to fry them up, but you're then able to kind of like take tortilla chips, which are already crunchy, and soften them up. So that's my favorite hack. And using half an onion, oil, enchilada sauce packs. I also found some that aren't canned, so it was a lot more lightweight and easier to travel with. A carton of egg whites optional, of course, but as I mentioned, super easy to just add in there and integrate into that meal. A can of refried beans and half a bell pepper. And, you know, as usual, you want to go ahead and heat that pan with oil, add your onion, tortilla chips, bell peppers, and just let that all soften, and then add your sauce, and then optional to also top with vegan sour cream or those vegan cheese shreds as well. Next is a fig tuna sandwich. Similar setup as the niçoise salad, using the dill and the lemon and all of that to season it. And for this, it's about 2 cans of chickpeas that you'll need. This recipe also calls for vegan mayo, but that might also not be necessary if that's not accessible to you. But it does add a lot of the consistency that really makes this sandwich what it is. I also use 2 large ribs of celery, a red onion that's diced, some parsley, Dijon mustard, silvered almonds, and a poultry seasoning blend, just like the ones that I mentioned earlier when talking about the spices, really easy to package. And juice of a lemon, salt and pepper. And so essentially for this, it's just cooking the chickpeas in a large bowl and then mashing them again, adding all of those toppings to it, and then assembling it with either some bread and lettuce or with rice crackers as well. That's a really nice topping. And I also like to just carry around those little like tapatio or cholula packets, and then that's really good on top of this as well. Next is veggie tacos. Really fun, delicious way to cheat. I like using veggie patties for this and then just breaking it up. I buy the cowboy quinoa patties from Trader Joe's, and they're really yummy and they are way too soft to actually use in a sandwich, so I like making them into tacos. And so for this, all you would need is an onion, oil, corn tortillas, veggie patties, lime, and your choice of either avocado or salsa. And as simple as it sounds, you just heat up tortillas, you add the veggie patty to the skillet, let it break apart, mix it in with the onion, and get as creative with it or keep it as simple as you like. I haven't tried it using the onions that I mentioned earlier with the vinegar and the lime, but I feel like that would be really good with this recipe as well. And you can just like take some cucumbers too, and it would be really nice with this meal. So for dinner, this one's a little bit fancy, I think, for going outdoors, but I actually tried it yesterday and I really liked it. So for this, it's an artichoke pasta, and it ends up coming out into like a really creamy pasta, which is really good. And I don't often eat too much artichoke because of just like the process of it, but buying either canned artichoke before or in a jar makes this really easy. And so the things that you would need for this is 3 cloves of garlic. You can also just buy them pre-minced. Nutritional yeast, black pepper, chili flakes. You can pop out that Pizza Hut chili flakes. Spaghetti, gluten-free if desired. Veggie broth, the other half of a lemon. Quartered artichoke hearts that you can also buy in a can. Baby spinach, and any type of alternative milk that you would like. And so the way to prepare this dish, better in a pot, and you want to just go ahead, add oil and minced garlic to that pot, then add the artichoke hearts, then all of the seasoning, the nutritional yeast, the pepper, the chili flakes, and then just saute that real quick. Afterwards, you want to lay all of the uncooked pasta at the bottom of the pan. And just like move a little bit of that artichoke to the side and make sure that the pasta is getting all of the bottom. Next, you want to pour vegetable broth evenly over the pan and bring it to a simmer. Once it's simmering, you want to reduce the heat, add the lemon juice, milk, and then slowly add the milk, just because you don't want to have to drain it later on. The benefit of this meal is that you don't really need to drain anything for the pasta, but just be really careful with the amount of liquid that you're putting in so that it's not too watery but creamy instead. And then once that's down, once you've turned off the heat, you can add some spinach in there, and then just stir that in for about a minute, since it's pretty quick to wilt. And then that's it for this dinner. Next is pesto zoodles. I never realized that it was a privilege to have one of those zoodle makers, but it's really fun. And I love this just because I like to eat a lot of pasta when camping, but sometimes that's not the best to load up on too many carbs sometimes. So I like to use zucchinis instead. And so preparing those ahead of time, or just having those already like in zoodle form beforehand is a lot easier for this to not have to deal with any of that waste on the side. So you really only need to heat the skillet with oil, add in garlic and onion, add long bell pepper slices and vegan sausage slices as well. You can add in a tomato if you would like. I like the small cherry ones, and then just cutting those in half. I also didn't mention this in here. That's supposed to have pesto sauce under the diced tomato. So I'll go ahead and fix that before we send out the slide, but pesto is what makes, oh wait, no, it's there. Sorry, didn't realize. Yeah, so add the zoodles, the oil and seasoning, and this should be done in about 15 to 20 minutes. Just the note on cooking zucchini is that there's a lot of moisture. So you definitely don't want to add it in too early, otherwise like spinach, it'll wilt really quickly. So just be mindful of that, and also maybe taking more than you anticipate because they can shrink. So that's a really simple meal as well. That's really good and pretty guilt-free. Are there any, I don't see any questions, so I'll just continue. So for a weekend backpacking trip, things are a little bit easier in terms of packing because it's a lot less items that you need. And that's because you're forced to really take a lot less with you when you're backpacking. So the goals really for this is to be lightweight, to be fuel efficient, to be nutrient dense, and multifunctional. And really the way that you eat when you are backpacking is a lot different than you would any other time, because you really want to make sure that you have a lot of fiber and protein in the morning and a lot of simple sugar in the afternoon to really keep your energy up. And then a really protein dense dinner to really help your body recover from what I'm assuming is a lot of hiking. And so for that, this list of ingredients is something that I would consider taking on any backpacking trip. And that's a block of tofu rice noodles, which have the extra benefit of being gluten-free, dehydrated beans and rice, dehydrated lentils, ramen noodles, dehydrated mashed potatoes, oatmeal, peanut butter jelly, vegan cheese, crackers, bread, tortillas, your spice kit. I would also, in addition to having that squeezed pack of oil, is one also with soy sauce. Having energy bars and packets. Seaweed is a fun snack that you can add to any of these meals as well. And the vegetables that I would recommend taking are the same backpacking, the really hearty ones that aren't gonna go bad in your pack. And that's carrots, bell peppers, kale, broccoli, and onion. And some vegan cream cheese, vegan deli slices, and some more seasoning. Really simple, but you don't need too much. The only thing I would add in here is like electrolyte packs, but we can talk about that a little bit later.
And then Karen, does a tofu block need to be kept refrigerated?
It does not, no. Yeah, I can add also maybe a link to this right here to the one that I purchased. But yeah, it's really stable.
Thank you.
So Gorp, good old raisins and peanuts and snacks. It's definitely great to mix up whatever you plan to make in terms of your trail mix that you're eating consistently. So there's an option here on the right for making trail mix that doesn't have nuts, just excluding the bottom 3 ingredients. So when you're making your trail mix, you really want to make sure that you have seeds that are high in omega-3 fatty acids, that you also get a lot of protein in there as well. And so some of those ingredients include pumpkin seeds, goji berries, crystallized ginger is a really fun way to like mix up trail mix, dates, pitted and cut, coconut crisps, banana, dark chocolate, and it's a lot more cost efficient as well to make your own trail mix than to buy like a bunch of small bags. And then if you do want to add nuts to this, peanuts, walnuts, and almonds are a really great addition. You can also make what I've seen people call energy bombs. And so these are rolled oats with any nut butter of your choice. This could be peanut butter, almond butter, any seed butter, mixed with cacao nibs, pitted dates as well, coconut flakes and raisins, and then just rolled up into a ball. They hold their shape really well, and you can pack them in any way that you want. Just know that sometimes the way that you package them may lead them to kind of get smushed wherever you are. So depending on your storage options, just take that into consideration. But they're really good, and they keep their shape pretty well, and they're really good, especially when you don't want to like stop and have a full lunch on the trail. And it's also a great replacement for some of those little gel energy packets that I put a picture of here as well. Is there another question, Celeste, or was it the same one as before?
Yes. Can you define the GORP acronym again?
Yeah, good old raisins and peanuts, which is super boring to eat, which is nice to make your own.
Good old raisins and peanuts with a twist.
Yes. Yeah, it's just like trail mix, another way of saying trail mix. So for storing your food when you're in the backcountry, there's a lot of different options that you have to keep bears, animals, people, and other critters away. And so something really important to check in with is if you're going to a park is to find out what their food storage system is. So if they have designated bear box, like the picture on the top left, if they have lockers, if there's rental options available. And so typically what you would use is a canister, a bear can, like the one featured on the bottom right of the page. And I don't personally own one of these. I've been able to just rent them at a visitor center when picking up my permits. So it's really great because these are like 50 to 70 bucks, depending on where you get them. So it's really nice to be able to rent them if you don't need it. Or also split the cost and carry your food together. And when storing these canisters, you want to make sure that it's at least 100 feet away from camp. And so that if anything is attracted to that smell, it's not in turn attracted to you. And you also don't want to put it next to a rock because an animal might just grab it and like start smashing it against the rock. And these are not, they're not waterproof, and they're also not shockproof. So that's not good if that's crushed. And you also want to place it upside down so that nothing intrudes through the lid. With these bear canisters, you also want to include anything that smells. So not just food, but toothpaste, sunscreen, sunblock, things like that. You want to keep in there as well. There's also bear bags, like the one on the next middle top. So these are lighter, but they can always be crushed, and they're not always allowed at parks. And one way that you can also store these, since they're not a canister, is a bear toss. And so for folks that aren't familiar with that, it's essentially tying a rope around two tree branches. There's a link in this slide as well that you can check out. And it's a long, complicated process sometimes, but essentially the goal is to make sure that your bag is hanging at least 15 feet off the ground and 5 feet away from a tree to keep a bear from like lunging at it. And it's a lot more work than I think it's worth, so I would go with the bear canister. Next, for areas that you're backpacking in that don't have bears, there's this thing. So on the bottom left photo, I'm watching over some beans, but in the background you can see that there is like a tripod situation going on with some food bags. And this is really great for discouraging mice from getting in your food. And you know, I think they're even more persistent than bears. They'll chew through anything that you leave out. I once had a mouse bite through my pants at night, and that was just, I don't know if it was the sodium in my body, but they'll chew through anything. So with walking sticks or hiking poles, you can just create a tripod situation. If you're with another person, you only need 3. If you're by yourself, then you gotta figure something else out because it requires 3. And all you need to do is create a tripod and then tie it up together at the end or balance it with the strings of the bags. And it holds pretty well and it stays for a long time and it's pretty stable. So I would recommend that if you're camping, doesn't have bears to worry about. And also just, you know, having leave no trace principles in mind. Food, I never dispose of food in the backcountry out there. You know, if you really have a dish that people can't eat, burying it might be really the only solution, but that's something that we really want to avoid. So I would eat a lot when I was backpacking. Also just, you know, because I was hungry all the time, but really to avoid carrying leftovers out. You know, no one really wanted to be the one to drink the tuna juice at the end of the can, but some people were bold enough to, and I appreciate them. I also try to eat as much food off of whatever I'm eating out of as possible. And I've just had to like lick the bowl in order to make sure that things are as clean as possible. And sometimes I've even drank that water that I've cleaned with just to, you know, be really careful about not creating more waste than I have to, especially for longer trips. You really don't want to be carrying too much food waste because it can add up in weight for sure. So breakfast and lunch, they're going to be really simple. What I do is prep just one large Ziploc bag with rolled oats, with flaxseed, chia, hemp seeds, and almond butter can be added afterwards. I don't put that in that preparation, but cinnamon and coconut oil are also an option to blend in there as well. The coconut oil I would also add at the end, and that's optional if you want to travel with it, but you can also use that to cook with. And just measuring out a cup every morning and adding hot water and adding any dry fruits, nuts can be added to this as well. It's also optional to use quinoa since it is really nutrient dense, and then just adding cinnamon, whatever seasonings to it, and dry fruit makes it really good in the morning. Next is this idea of drivers and riders. So I had mentioned earlier, just like crackers, tortillas, pita bread, definitely gets a lot less crush than regular when backpacking, but basically these are our drivers, and anything else on top, that vegan cream cheese, any vegan deli slices, cheese, peanut butter jelly, you know, you really don't have too much room to get creative with lunch, and that's basically what you're gonna have. So for dinner, this is a pretty light meal, so this might even just be an appetizer, but ramen. So you can make quick ramen with just having a ramen noodle pack, some seaweed, mashed potato or tofu, and that same seasoning. So all you would have to do is boil water, add in noodles, stir it, add in the seasoning. I would also probably add soy sauce to this dish and mashed potatoes or tofu. Mashed potatoes are a really great addition to any backcountry meal just because it adds a lot of volume and a lot of calories to any meal. Some people also turn into what they call ramen bombs. So just mashing all of that together and topping that with seaweed is a pretty popular hit. Next is the Thai dish. It's Thai noodles, and this would just be used, made using the rice noodles, the tofu block, whatever veggies of choice you would like. And for the sauce, for this, I use that same peanut butter that I already have with me. Brown sugar, cayenne, garlic powder, ginger powder. Ginger powder is optional. Sriracha sauce. I also carry like those little sriracha packets, and salt and pepper. And really all you have to do is boil your water, add in the rice noodles, make sure you're stirring it, chopping your tofu and veggies, and then getting that sauce in there as well after draining the noodles, and adding then all of that together. Another option if you don't want to clean a big pot is having the sauce, making it in a separate one and adding it to each individual bowl. For anyone who's eating is also a great way to save with cleanup time. I also didn't mention this, but there's a really cool, you can also make this at home, but scrapers that folks have a lot that carry around in the backcountry to scrape off the inside of pots and pans, since that's often like the most annoying process after cooking in the backcountry. And that's why so many meals just require to boil water, and you can create these in separate bags as well. And before we move on, I'm just gonna mention that there are a lot of prepackaged dehydrated backcountry meals that folks can purchase like at outdoor recreation stores. They do cost a lot, typically like $10 to $15 per meal, which can add up really easily. But if you do ever want to splurge and buy one, I would consider saving the bag that it's in, because it's a great way to cook food later on inside those bags. And for all of this, really, we're going to talk about dehydrating food afterwards, but it's just a really great way to cut down on weight, and assembling these meals using those bags is really helpful. And then no questions so far. Great. So dehydrating food for the backcountry. So what foods can you dehydrate? You can basically dehydrate anything other than dairy products and food that is high in fat. And so that includes also meat and seafood, which we're not going to get into, but fruits, vegetables, legumes, beans, pasta, all of that can be prepared ahead of time, and even sauces. All of that can be prepared ahead of time. And really, the dehydrating process is just removing moisture while retaining nutrients and flavor in your food. So compared to prepackaged food, it can be cheaper, it can be lighter, and it's really important, like I mentioned, cutting down on weight. So most recipes do call for a dehydrator, but it's not always necessary. Using an oven in your lowest setting is also a possibility, in keeping it for that amount of time. Sometimes the lowest setting on ovens is about 170 degrees, and you can drop that down to 140, which is the required temperature for most of these. just by propping your oven door open about 2 to 3 inches. So for folks that don't have a dehydrator or aren't looking to purchase one, that's an option as well. A lot of folks also make DIY dehydrators. I haven't gone into that project yet, but it sounds like a lot of fun. And that's that wooden box that you see pictured here. There's also the actual dehydrators, which are on the right side. And what I have seen is that the ones on the bottom are really the optimal ones because they have more surface area, so you're able to cook more foods versus removing that entire spiral of space that you have in the one that's pictured above. So those are some different tools that you can use for dehydrating your food. And yeah, I've seen people get really elaborate with them, like with, you know, really controlling the type of temperature of air that's getting in there. But yeah, like I said, I haven't dove too deep into that project. So they typically cost about $30 to $100, but you can also borrow them from anybody. And they also come sauces with parchment paper. Parchment paper is really important to use in this process as well. And some companies already have them like pre-cut for their own dehydrators. So we'll get into food prep and meal prep, also how to store all of this. A lot of dehydrated food can last 5 to 10 years if properly stored, and also needs to be stored in a cool, dark, dry place, so just the pantry is fine.
We have a question. I think this is a really good question. So would you recommend practicing some of these recipes before, like if you've never used them, before you go out to the backcountry?
Yeah, definitely. So something that I was also going to mention is that with so much time that a lot of us have right now at home, this is a great opportunity to even prepare meals for the great apocalypse. Who knows? Even not for the backcountry. But I'm definitely, after this, probably going to experiment with different methods of getting meals together. But the drying process for this is about 8 to 10 hours. I guess the lowest end being 2 and the highest being 10. So this is definitely something that if you are going to take this backpacking, you want to already kind of be preparing like days in advance. I'll also talk a little bit about like how to rehydrate your food properly when you're in the backcountry. And I think just following those rules, it's kind of hard to mess up.
Awesome, thanks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so another tool that you can use, unless you're like really expertly skilled at cutting really thin slices, using one of those mandolin slicers, just being really careful with it, but that really helps get thin, even slices. But you also don't want to cut too thin because it's possible that as the food is dehydrating, it shrinks, and then when it's rehydrated, it's completely lost in the meal. So you really want to think about getting the right size for that, but typically 1/4 inch is good for your food. So how to dehydrate fruits and veggies. For fruit, it can be dehydrated either sliced or blended. It can be added to granola or oatmeal, but essentially blended fruit allows you to make a fruit leather. And you can also rehydrate it into pudding. So a lot of backcountry dessert options for rehydrating fruits and so high in sugar. And so for this, you would want to dry those slices at 135 degrees for 8 to 12 hours or until they reach that leathery consistency. For vegetables, things that you don't want to try dehydrating are onions because they smell, and you can find cheaper ones or use onion powder instead. Also canned veggies, they're too high in moisture content to dehydrate properly, except for beets. But you can dehydrate frozen vegetables without thawing it. You can also dehydrate cooked vegetables and raw vegetables. But really the rule of thumb is that if you need to cook your vegetables before eating them typically, then you want to cook them before dehydrating them. But if they're raw, then you can just dehydrate them raw if you typically eat them raw. And so for this, a pound of veggies would typically yield about 3 to 4 cups. And so if you want to still take those vegetables that I mentioned earlier, backpacking, then you can also dehydrate them, cut down on a lot of weight, and still make those same meals. And you want to try these at 125 degrees Fahrenheit or 135 for veggies with higher moisture content. And that's the same 8 to 12 hours or until they reach that desired consistency. So it's a pretty big window, 8 to 12, so make sure to be checking them in that time frame. So to dehydrate grains and pasta, rice and quinoa are similar. It's also optional to cook them in broth instead of water so that they have a little bit more flavor. But you also want to make sure that it's low-fat broth, since I mentioned earlier, like high-fat foods aren't really the best for dehydrating. So in order to make sure that it's stable, shelf stable, you want to make sure the broth isn't too high in fat, but it's a great way to add flavor to rice and quinoa. So you want to dry your rice at 125 degrees Fahrenheit for 5 hours or until hard. And you also want to break up the clumps because it's really easy for those to get really clumpy. And for quinoa, it's 135 degrees for 8 to 10 hours, so a little bit longer. But yes, you do want to cook those beforehand. Sorry about that. So for pasta, similar, you want to cook pasta, drain it, and spread it evenly over parchment paper. What you can do for shorter noodles is just spread those evenly, but for longer ones, you can curl those up into nests, like bird nests, those little like swirls that y'all might have seen. And you want to dry those for 135 degrees Fahrenheit for 2 to 4 hours. You can also marinate these noodles prior as well, just like the rice. You can do it in soy sauce or any other sauce, but probably just like a marinade and not an actual thick sauce. But to dehydrate sauces, all you would need to do is spread that evenly on a parchment paper and dry it at 135 degrees for 8 to 10 hours. And just scraping those off afterwards and adding them to any pack really just requires you then heating it back up later on to use it again. And it retains the same flavor. For beans, you want to use canned beans. Probably not homemade ones unless it's been made in like a pressure cooker. But I just go with canned beans. You want to drain them and rinse them and spread them evenly. You also want to dry those at 125 degrees for 6 to 8 hours. And 1 can of beans yields 1 cup of beans afterwards. And I'm just going to quickly talk about rehydrating this food in the backcountry. So now that you've put in a lot of effort into getting all of this together, a great way to make sure that your food reaches its ideal consistency is to let it soak for 5 minutes. So if you have some sort of jet boil or pot of water that's already cooking, just let it sit there as the water is boiling. You want to bring the water to a boil and then turn down the heat. You want to let your meal, depending on whatever it is, simmer for about 2 to 10 minutes and then turn off the heat and cover the pot so that the rest of that moisture is being absorbed within whatever it is that you're rehydrating. And that's also the added benefit of cooking like pastas outdoors, is that when you are using that liquid to heat it, you can add the sauces and you can add the dehydrated vegetables to really absorb most of that liquid so that you're not like left with a soup. And you want to let it sit for 10 minutes or until it's tender. And obviously this is just not applicable for every meal that you make outside, but for the most part, like following this process, I think really helps. And also the ratio. So it's typically an even ratio of water and food that you want. So if it's a cup of food, it's a cup of water that you'll use. And that's pretty standard for most backcountry meals, is a cup of food and a cup of water. But you know, a cup and a half is also in that spectrum as well. And that's all that I have for preparing food, and that's it. So do we have any questions?
Yes. Any tips on how to minimize impact on the environment when cooking outside?
Any tips? Definitely being in an area that already is kind of like free of debris and there's a lot of space, avoiding any type of like flammable situation, setting anything on fire accidentally. But for the most part, really just watching the food waste that you create is the best way to minimize environmental impacts. I know some people will cook their food and eat it before actually getting to their campsite to avoid like smell following them. And I think that might be more of a safety measure, but also just a great way to make sure that none of the food that you have is following you waste-wise. I lick my bowl even when I'm not camping. Nice. I had to not get into that habit afterwards.
All right, any other questions? Go ahead and type them in, and we'll be sending around the presentations. You'll have all the recipes afterwards.
Nice. Yeah, I'm just looking at the chat right now. All right, great. Yeah, I'll go ahead and send over that presentation links as well.
We have one more question that came in. Do you have suggestions for cleaning products to take camping, or like what would be the best kind of leave no trace, like soap and stuff like that?
Yeah, definitely. So after licking your bowl clean, using just like a little scrubby, and Dr. Bronner's is really, really what I always use because you only need that like 1 or 2 drops. So that's my ideal soap that I always take with me. And just making sure that when you do clean it, that you're just really not dumping the water, but like spreading it out. And that's also like when you're brushing your teeth, you want to like spray everything instead of like spitting it all into one glob. And I also use tea bags sometimes to like clean out my bowl after breakfast, like the oatmeal flakes. And that's it.
Great. Okay, well, I think that does it for us. I will be connecting everybody via email to Anna Karen if there are any more questions that come up, and you'll get the slides and all the recipes as well as the recording of this webinar. So thank you everybody so much for coming. Make sure to check out the Training Institute website for upcoming webinars. And thank you very much to Anna Karen for this presentation today.
Thank you all. Thank you for organizing this, Celeste. I hope you all have a great day.
Awesome. Take care, everybody.